Chapter 1. Born into Politics. Nancy Pelosi was born on March 26, 1940, in Baltimore, Maryland. Her birth name was Nancy Patricia D'Alessandro. Baltimore was a busy city, full of energy and people from different backgrounds. It was also a city with challenges: poverty, inequality, and tough politics. Nancy's family played a big role in shaping that city. Her father, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., was not just any man. He was the mayor of Baltimore. People called him Tommy the Elder. He was a strong, passionate leader. He loved his city and worked hard to improve it. Nancy admired him deeply. He taught her about the importance of helping others. The D'Alessandro house was always lively. It was full of conversations about politics, ideas, and plans. Nancy's parents often welcomed guests, neighbors, leaders, and community members. People came with problems, and her father listened. Sometimes Nancy would peek around the corner, watching and learning. She saw how her father treated everyone with respect. It didn't matter if they were rich or poor. To him, everyone mattered. Nancy's mother, Annunziata, was also a strong influence. People called her Big Nancy. She was organized and smart. Annunziata managed the household while also supporting her husband's work. She taught young Nancy about strength and resilience. If you want something, Annunziata often said, you have to work for it. These words stayed with Nancy forever. Growing up, Nancy saw the struggles of the people in her community. Baltimore was a city of contrasts. There were beautiful neighborhoods, but there were also areas filled with poverty. Some families had opportunities. Others had none. This unfairness made a deep impression on her. One day, Nancy followed her father to a public meeting. She was just a little girl, but she sat quietly in the back. She watched as people stood up, one by one, sharing their problems. Some were angry, others were sad, and many were desperate. Her father listened carefully, nodding, taking notes, and responding with calm confidence. "We'll find a way," he said. "Together, we'll fix this." Nancy felt proud. She wanted to help people just like her father. But life was not always easy for the D'Alessandro family. Politics could be tough. Her father had enemies, people who didn't agree with his ideas. Sometimes there were arguments, even threats. Nancy saw her parents handle these challenges with courage. They never gave up. "You can't let fear stop you," her father once told her. "When you believe in something, you fight for it." Nancy's family also valued faith. They were devout Catholics, and their faith guided their actions. Nancy went to church every Sunday. She prayed and listened to stories of compassion and sacrifice. These lessons shaped her values. They taught her to care for others, especially those in need. As a child, Nancy was curious and determined. She asked many questions. "Why do some people have so little?" she asked her father one evening. He paused, thinking carefully before he answered. "Because the system isn't fair," he said. "But that's why we work so hard, to change it." Nancy nodded. She didn't fully understand yet, but she felt a spark inside her. At school, Nancy was a good student. She enjoyed learning and loved history. She read books about great leaders and imagined herself making a difference someday. But for now, she was content watching her father. He was her first hero. One winter, a terrible storm hit Baltimore. Roads were blocked, and many families couldn't get food or supplies. Nancy's father organized help quickly. Trucks delivered food, and volunteers went door to door, checking on people. Nancy joined them, carrying bags of bread and cans of soup. She saw the smiles on people's faces and felt a warmth in her heart. Helping others was not just her father's duty. It was the family's purpose. By the time Nancy was a teenager, she understood what leadership meant. It wasn't about power or fame. It was about service. It was about standing up for others, even when it was hard. Her parents had shown her this through their actions, and she knew, deep down, that one day she would follow their example. Nancy's early years in Baltimore laid the foundation for her life. She didn't know it then, but those lessons of compassion, courage, and determination would guide her in the years to come. The little girl watching her father at city meetings would grow up to make history. Baltimore was not just her hometown, it was her first classroom. And in that classroom, Nancy Pelosi learned the most important lesson of all. Leadership begins with service. Chapter 2. A Strong Foundation. Nancy Pelosi grew up in a warm and loving home. Her family was close. They cared for each other deeply. Every morning, the house was filled with voices, talking, laughing, planning. There were 6 children in the D'Alessandro family, and Nancy was the youngest. She was the only girl. Life in the D'Alessandro home was busy. There were always visitors, neighbors, friends, and political leaders. People came for advice, help, or simply to share a meal. Nancy watched as her parents welcomed everyone with kindness. They believed in helping others. Nancy's mother, Annunziata, played an important role in shaping her future. People called her Big Nancy because of her strong personality. She was wise and full of energy. She knew how to get things done. She managed the home, helped with politics, and supported the community. She always seemed to know what to do, even in difficult situations. One day, Nancy sat beside her mother at the kitchen table. She watched as Annunziata wrote letters, made phone calls, and gave advice to women in the neighborhood. "You have to be strong," her mother said, "and never be afraid to speak your mind." These words stayed with Nancy for a long time. Annunziata wanted her daughter to be independent. She taught Nancy how to make decisions. "You don't have to wait for someone to tell you what to do," she would say. "You already know." Nancy listened carefully. She knew her mother was right. But life in the D'Alessandro home was not always easy. Politics could bring challenges. Sometimes there were loud arguments at the dinner table. Sometimes her father faced criticism in the newspapers. Nancy saw how her parents handled these challenges with grace and determination. They never gave up. They worked harder. Despite the pressures, there was also joy. the D'Alessandro family celebrated together. They shared stories, played games, and enjoyed traditional Italian meals. Nancy loved sitting with her brothers, listening to their stories about school and sports. But she also had dreams of her own. As she grew older, Nancy realized that being part of a political family meant learning how to serve others. She often helped with small tasks, stuffing envelopes, answering phones, and greeting visitors. She loved feeling useful. One summer afternoon, Nancy and her mother walked through the streets of their neighborhood. They visited families who needed help. Some were struggling with money. Others were worried about their children. Annunziata listened carefully to each problem. "We will find a way," she said. Nancy admired her mother's strength. At school, Nancy was a hardworking student. She enjoyed learning, especially about history and government. She asked many questions in class. Her teachers noticed her curiosity and determination. "You have a bright future," one teacher told her. Nancy smiled but stayed humble. She knew that success required effort. Church was also a big part of Nancy's life. Every Sunday, the family attended Mass. Their faith gave them strength. It taught Nancy to be kind and generous. She learned that true leadership meant putting others first. As the years passed, Nancy became more confident. She learned from both her parents. Her father taught her about leadership and politics. Her mother taught her about resilience and courage. One evening, Nancy sat with her mother on the porch. The sun was setting and the air was cool. "Mama," she asked softly, "do you think I can do great things someday?" Annunziata smiled. "Of course, Nancy. But remember, greatness isn't about being famous. It's about working hard and helping others." Nancy nodded. She understood. She wanted to follow in her family's footsteps. She wanted to make a difference. Looking back, Nancy knew she had a strong foundation. Her family had given her love, values, and the courage to dream. These lessons would stay with her forever. In the heart of Baltimore, inside a small but busy home, a future leader was growing. The foundation had been built. Now, it was up to Nancy to take the next step. Chapter 3. Moving to California. After finishing college, Nancy's life changed in a big way. She fell in love with a young businessman named Paul Pelosi. Paul was smart, kind, and ambitious. They shared dreams of a happy future together. Soon, they got married in a beautiful church ceremony, surrounded by family and friends. But marriage also brought a big move. Paul's work took them far from Baltimore, all the way to California. They settled in San Francisco, a city full of hills, cable cars, and fresh opportunities. It was different from Nancy's hometown. The weather was milder, and the people were diverse. Everywhere she looked, she saw new faces, new ideas, and new challenges. Nancy loved her new home, but it wasn't always easy. She missed her family back in Baltimore. The familiar sounds of her childhood home, the laughter, the political discussions, the busy streets, were gone. San Francisco felt exciting, but also unfamiliar. Still, Nancy was determined to make the best of it. Paul and Nancy started their life together with hope. Soon, they had their first child, and then another, and another. Raising 5 children was not an easy task. Every day was busy. Mornings were filled with getting the children ready for school. Afternoons were full of homework, soccer games, and family dinners. Nancy loved being a mother. She cared deeply for her children and wanted to give them a good life. She taught them the values she had learned from her own parents: kindness, hard work, and the importance of helping others. But even with all the responsibilities at home, Nancy's heart still belonged to politics. She followed the news closely. She read the newspaper every morning. She listened to speeches on the radio and watched debates on television. Politics was in her blood, and it always would be. At night, after the children were asleep, Nancy would sit at the kitchen table with Paul. They talked about the future. "San Francisco is full of opportunities," Paul said one evening. "You could do so much here." Nancy smiled, but she wasn't sure. Could she really balance politics and family life? One day, a friend invited Nancy to a political event. She was hesitant. With 5 children, finding time was difficult. But something inside her told her to go. When she arrived, she felt the familiar excitement of being around people who cared about change. They discussed issues like health care, education, and equal rights. Nancy listened carefully. She had so much to say, so many ideas. Slowly, she started getting involved. She joined local Democratic groups and helped organize events. Her natural leadership skills stood out. People admired her passion and energy. They saw something special in her. "You should run for office," some told her. Nancy laughed. "I'm too busy with my kids," she would reply. But deep inside, the idea stayed with her. San Francisco in the 1970s and 80s was a place of political energy. There were protests, social movements, and calls for change. Nancy saw how the city was growing and evolving. She wanted to be part of it. She wanted to help shape the future. But she also knew her first job was being a mother. She found ways to balance both roles. Some days were harder than others. There were sleepless nights, school meetings, and last-minute emergencies. But Nancy managed it all with patience and determination. Her children also became interested in her work. They often saw her writing letters, making phone calls, and talking with community leaders. "Why do you care so much, Mom?" one of her daughters asked. Nancy smiled. "Because helping people is important," she said. "And I want you to grow up in a better world." Over time, Nancy became more confident. She met influential people and built strong connections in San Francisco's political world. She learned how to bring people together, how to solve problems, and how to stay focused even when things got tough. Then, one evening, Paul looked at her and said, "Nancy, I think it's time. You should do it." Nancy felt a rush of excitement and fear. Could she really take that step? Could she enter the world of politics while still being a mother? It was a big decision, but deep down, she knew she was ready. Moving to California had been a new beginning for Nancy Pelosi. It was a journey of love, family, and discovery. The next chapter of her life was about to begin, and it would change everything. Chapter 4: A Call to Serve. Nancy Pelosi's life was busy. Raising 5 children took time, energy, and patience. But deep inside, her love for politics remained strong. She never forgot the lessons from her childhood. She still cared about helping others. Living in San Francisco brought new opportunities. The city was full of energy. Young people, activists, and leaders working for change. It was a place where ideas grew. Nancy felt inspired by the people around her. In the 1970s, she joined the Democratic Party in California. At first, she worked behind the scenes. She planned events, raised money, and organized meetings. Her work was important, but it was not easy. There were long days and late nights. Nancy was determined. She wanted to make a difference. She believed in the power of teamwork. People noticed her energy and focus. They saw that she was serious. Soon, important political leaders began to trust her. One day, a local politician asked Nancy to help with an election campaign. She agreed right away. It was an exciting challenge. She worked hard, knocking on doors, talking to voters, and listening to their concerns. She loved meeting people and hearing their stories. Nancy's dedication paid off. The campaign was a success. More people began to see her as a leader. They saw that she was smart and passionate. She understood the problems facing families in San Francisco. As time passed, Nancy's responsibilities grew. She became the chair of the California Democratic Party. It was a big role, and she took it seriously. She traveled across the state, met with different groups, and spoke about issues that mattered: education, healthcare, and jobs. But politics was not always easy. Some people didn't believe she could lead. Others thought she should focus on her family instead. Nancy did not let them stop her. She had learned from her parents to stay strong and keep going. Her hard work earned respect. Friends and supporters started asking a big question. "Nancy, why don't you run for office?" At first, she hesitated. Running for Congress was a huge step. It meant a bigger commitment and greater challenges. She thought about her family. Her children were growing up. They supported her. But the decision was not easy. Could she balance family life and politics? She talked to her husband, Paul. He encouraged her. He believed in her. Nancy also thought about the people she had met over the years. They needed a voice. They needed someone who understood their struggles. Slowly, an idea began to grow in her heart. Maybe she could be that voice. Then, in 1987, everything changed. A congresswoman from San Francisco, Sala Burton, became very sick. She knew she could no longer serve. One day, she called Nancy and made a special request. "Nancy," she said softly, "I want you to take my place." Nancy was shocked. Her heart raced. She knew this was a big responsibility. Me? She asked. Sala nodded. You are ready. Those words stayed with Nancy. She talked to her family once more. She prayed for guidance. Finally, she made a decision. She would run for Congress. The campaign was tough. There were other strong candidates. Some people doubted her experience. But Nancy was not afraid. She visited every neighborhood. She spoke at community events. She knocked on doors, just like she had years ago. She listened to people's hopes and fears. Her message was clear. She cared about families. She wanted better health care and education. She promised to fight for the people of San Francisco. Slowly, support grew. People began to believe in her. Election day arrived. Nancy felt nervous but hopeful. She had done everything she could. When the results came in, she had won. It was an emotional moment. She hugged her family. She thanked her supporters. And she promised to serve with all her heart. Nancy Pelosi had answered the call to serve. Her journey in politics was just beginning. Chapter 5. A New Voice in Congress. In 1987, Nancy Pelosi won a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. It was a proud moment. She stood on stage, smiling as people cheered. Her heart was full of gratitude. She had worked hard, and now she was ready to serve. Nancy knew the road ahead would not be easy. Congress was a place of power and challenge. Many lawmakers had been there for years. They were experienced and well-known. Nancy was new. She had to prove herself. On her first day in Washington, D.C., Nancy walked into the grand Capitol building. She looked up at the tall columns and shining chandeliers. It felt exciting and a little overwhelming. The halls were busy, with people talking, rushing, and making decisions. But Nancy was not afraid. She was ready to listen, learn, and lead. Her district in San Francisco had many needs. Families struggled with high costs. Women wanted better opportunities. Children needed quality education. Nancy had promised to fight for them, and she meant every word. She quickly got to work. Every morning, she arrived early at her office. She met with experts, listened to community leaders, and studied reports. She wanted to understand every issue before making decisions. Nancy became known for her clear, strong voice. She stood up in meetings and spoke with confidence. Some people listened carefully. Others were unsure. A few even questioned if she was the right person for the job. But Nancy stayed focused. She knew that leadership meant standing firm, even when it was difficult. One of the first issues she fought for was health care. Many people in her district couldn't afford to see a doctor. Some parents had sick children, but no way to pay for treatment. Nancy believed health care was a right, not a privilege. She pushed for better laws to help families get the care they needed. Women's rights were also important to her. In Congress, there were not many women at the time. Most lawmakers were men. Nancy wanted to change that. She spoke about equal pay, job opportunities, and better child care. Some people agreed with her ideas, but others did not. Nancy's days were long and busy. She went from meetings to committee hearings, then back to her office to answer calls and write speeches. Sometimes she felt tired, but she never gave up. She remembered her mother's words, "Be strong, speak up." One day, a woman from her district visited her office. She was a single mother, working 2 jobs. She was struggling to pay rent and buy food for her children. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I just want a better future for my kids." Nancy listened carefully. She felt the woman's pain. Moments like this reminded her why she had come to Congress: to help people, to bring change, and to give hope. But politics was not always kind. Some people disagreed with Nancy's ideas. They challenged her in debates and questioned her plans. There were times when she felt frustrated, but she remained determined. She knew that progress takes time. Over the months, Nancy built friendships with other lawmakers. She learned how to find common ground. She understood that working together was the best way to solve problems. Slowly, she earned respect. More people began to listen to her ideas. In Congress, every vote mattered. When a bill came to the floor, Nancy studied it carefully. She asked herself, "Will this help families in my district?" If the answer was yes, she fought for it. If the answer was no, she spoke against it. Her passion and hard work did not go unnoticed. Reporters started writing about her. "A rising star in Congress," one newspaper called her. People in San Francisco felt proud of her. They believed she was truly fighting for them. But Nancy did not let success change her. She stayed focused on her work. She called her children every day to check on them. She made sure to spend time with her husband, Paul, whenever she could. She knew that balancing family and politics was important. One evening, after a long day, Nancy sat in her office, looking out at the city lights of Washington. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from Baltimore to San Francisco, and now to Congress. She smiled. This was just the beginning. Nancy Pelosi had found her place in Congress. She was not just a new voice. She was a strong, determined leader, and she was ready for whatever came next. Before we begin Chapter 6, a quick note for our listeners. You're currently listening to this audiobook on WooEnglish. Remember, this content is specially made for WooEnglish listeners only. If you're hearing it on any other channel, it may be a violation of WooEnglish's rights. Please ensure you're tuned into the right source to fully enjoy and respect this audiobook journey. Now, let's continue the story. Chapter 6: Facing Tough Challenges. Nancy Pelosi worked hard in Congress. Every day brought new tasks, new debates, and new decisions. It was not easy. She had to stand firm even when things got tough. Politics can be challenging. Some people agreed with Nancy, others did not. Sometimes they criticized her ideas. They said she was too bold, too ambitious. But Nancy did not let the criticism stop her. She believed in her work. One of her biggest challenges came when she spoke up for health care reform. Many Americans were struggling. They could not afford medical care. Nancy wanted to change that. She believed everyone deserved health care, rich or poor. But not everyone in Congress agreed. Some thought her ideas were too expensive. Others believed the government should not be involved. There were long debates. Some of them were heated. People argued loudly. The media questioned her plans. It was a stressful time. Nancy did not back down. She stood in front of Congress and spoke with confidence. "Families are counting on us," she said. Her voice was steady. Her message was clear. Slowly, she convinced more lawmakers to listen. There were moments when Nancy felt tired. There were days when nothing seemed to go right. But she reminded herself why she was there. She thought about the families who needed help. That gave her strength to keep going. Sometimes politics felt personal. Some critics said harsh things about her. They questioned her abilities. They said a woman could not lead in such a tough environment. Nancy knew she had to prove them wrong. Her family supported her through the difficult times. Paul, her husband, always encouraged her. Her children reminded her to stay strong. She called them often just to hear their voices. It gave her comfort. One of the hardest moments came during a national financial crisis. Businesses were closing. People were losing their jobs. Fear spread across the country. Congress had to act fast. Nancy played a key role in finding solutions. She worked day and night. She met with leaders from both parties. Some wanted quick solutions. Others wanted to wait. Tensions were high. The future of the economy was at risk. Nancy knew it was important to stay calm. She listened carefully. She asked tough questions. She encouraged teamwork. Slowly, progress was made. A plan was created to help struggling businesses and families. Not everyone was happy with the solution. Some thought it was not enough. Others thought it was too much. Nancy understood that leadership meant making difficult choices. She accepted the criticism and focused on moving forward. Through these challenges, Nancy inspired others. Young women looked up to her. They saw her strength and determination. They began to believe that they too could lead. One day, a young woman approached Nancy after a speech. She looked nervous but excited. "You inspire me," she said. "I want to work in politics someday." Nancy smiled. "You can," she said. "Work hard and never give up." Nancy's journey was not always easy. She faced many tough moments, but she never lost sight of her goals. She believed in making life better for people. That belief kept her going. Over time, Nancy earned more respect. Her colleagues saw her strength. They admired her courage. Even those who disagreed with her respected her determination. At the end of each long day, Nancy would sit quietly and think about her journey. She remembered the lessons from her parents. She remembered the hard work it took to get here. And she knew that every challenge made her stronger. Nancy Pelosi's story shows that leadership is not always easy. There are tough times, there are difficult decisions, but with hard work, focus, and heart, anything is possible. Chapter 7. Breaking the Glass Ceiling. In 2007, history was made. Nancy Pelosi became the first female Speaker of the House. It was a moment of pride, not only for her, but for women across the United States. No woman had ever held this powerful position before. It was a new beginning. On the day of her swearing in, the U.S. Capitol was filled with excitement. Supporters, colleagues, and family gathered to witness the historic event. As Nancy stood in front of the crowd, her heart pounded. She looked out and saw her children and grandchildren smiling. It was a reminder of how far she had come. When she raised her right hand to take the oath, the room fell silent. She repeated the words slowly, her voice steady and strong. Then, with a firm handshake and a bright smile, she took her place as Speaker. Applause filled the room. Some cheered. Others wiped away tears. It was a moment to remember. Nancy looked around. She saw many men in suits. Congress had been mostly male for a long time, but now things were changing. She stood proudly, knowing she was breaking barriers. Her rise to Speaker did not happen overnight. It took years of hard work, long nights, and difficult decisions. She had faced challenges, criticism, and moments of doubt, but she never gave up. She believed women could lead at the highest levels, and now she had proven it. Her first speech as Speaker was powerful. "For our daughters and granddaughters," she said, "we have broken the marble ceiling." The audience erupted in applause. Nancy's words were clear. This was not just about her. It was about opening doors for future generations. But being Speaker came with great responsibility. Nancy now had to lead the House of Representatives. She had to bring people together. She had to make tough choices. The country faced many challenges: wars, economic troubles, and health crises. People were counting on her. Some questioned if she was ready. Others doubted her ability to handle the pressure. But Nancy stayed focused. She worked harder than ever. She listened to different opinions and found solutions. Her leadership style was clear. She was firm but fair. She believed in teamwork and respect. She encouraged debate but demanded action. She knew that leadership was not about power. It was about service. One of her biggest goals as Speaker was to fight for healthcare reform. She wanted to make sure every American had access to medical care. Some lawmakers opposed her ideas. They said it was too expensive. They argued it would not work. But Nancy believed in it. She fought hard. She convinced others to support the plan. She also focused on helping working families. She wanted better wages, stronger job opportunities, and support for women in the workforce. She understood the struggles of everyday people. She knew what it meant to balance work and family life. Nancy's days were long. Meetings, phone calls, and speeches filled her schedule. Sometimes she barely had time to rest, but she never complained. She had a mission: to serve the people and make a difference. Even with the pressures of leadership, Nancy remained grounded. She often reminded herself why she started this journey. She thought about her parents, who taught her to work hard and never give up. She thought about the people in her district who trusted her to fight for them. As speaker, Nancy inspired many young women. They saw her as proof that anything was possible. They saw that leadership was not just for men. They saw that with determination and hard work, they too could break barriers. Years later, when asked about that day in 2007, Nancy would smile. "It was not just my victory," she said. "It was a victory for every woman who dreams of leadership." Nancy Pelosi had broken the glass ceiling, and she did it with strength, courage, and grace. Chapter 8. A Leader in Crisis. In 2008, the United States faced a crisis. The economy was falling apart. Businesses were closing. People were losing their jobs. Families were scared. Many had no money to pay their bills or keep their homes. It was a dark time for the country. Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. She knew the situation was serious. She saw the fear in people's eyes. She heard their voices, worried mothers, struggling workers, and small business owners who were losing everything. They needed help. They needed hope. The crisis happened fast. One day, everything seemed fine. The next day, the stock market crashed. Banks were failing. Millions of people were affected. Nancy had to act quickly. In Washington, lawmakers argued about what to do. Some wanted to wait. Others wanted to act fast. There were long meetings and tense debates. The pressure was high. Every decision mattered. Nancy listened carefully. She spoke with experts. She studied reports. The numbers were frightening. If Congress did nothing, things would get worse. But if they made the wrong move, the economy might not recover. It was a difficult choice. Nancy gathered lawmakers from both political parties. She told them, "This is not about politics. This is about people." Her voice was strong, but inside she felt the weight of responsibility. She knew millions of families were counting on Congress to act. She worked day and night to find solutions. She talked to economists and business leaders. She asked tough questions. Some lawmakers disagreed with her ideas. They said the government should not spend too much money. Others wanted to move faster. Tension filled the air. Finally, after many long discussions, Nancy helped create a plan. The government would provide financial support to banks and businesses. This would help stop job losses and keep the economy from collapsing. But not everyone was happy. Some people thought it was unfair to help big banks. Others worried about the cost. Nancy understood their concerns. She agreed that mistakes had been made in the financial system. But she also knew that doing nothing would hurt ordinary people the most. She reminded Congress that this was not just about Wall Street. It was about families across the country. When the bill was finally ready, it was time to vote. The whole country was watching. Would it pass? Would it fail? The room was silent as each lawmaker cast their vote. Nancy sat calmly, waiting. Inside, her heart was racing. If the bill passed, it could help millions of Americans. If it failed, things could get even worse. Finally, the results were in. The bill passed. It was a moment of relief, but also of caution. The work was not over. The crisis was not solved overnight. It would take time. After the vote, Nancy spoke to the nation. She told Americans that Congress had taken action, but more work was needed. "We are in this together," she said. "We will get through this." Her words gave people hope. The months that followed were tough. Businesses slowly recovered. Some people found new jobs, others still struggled. Nancy continued to push for more support, better health care, job programs, and relief for homeowners. She wanted to make sure no one was left behind. There were critics along the way. Some said the government was doing too much. Others said it was not enough, but Nancy stayed focused. She believed leadership meant making hard decisions, even when people disagreed. Over time, the economy began to improve. The stock market rose again. Jobs returned. Families felt more secure. Nancy's leadership during the crisis helped steer the country through one of its darkest times. Years later, when she looked back, she knew it was one of the hardest periods of her career. But she also knew it was one of the most important. She had led with courage and compassion. Nancy Pelosi proved that in times of crisis, true leaders do not run away. They step forward. They listen, they act, and they give hope. And that is exactly what she did. Chapter 9. Standing for Health Care. In 2009, America faced a health care crisis. Millions of people could not afford medical care. Some had jobs, but no health insurance. Others had pre-existing conditions and were denied coverage. Families worried about medical bills. They lived in fear of getting sick. Nancy Pelosi believed that health care was a basic right. She knew that people needed help. President Barack Obama wanted to change the system. He had a big idea, the Affordable Care Act. It was a plan to make health care more available and affordable for everyone. But passing the law would not be easy. Many people opposed the plan. Some lawmakers said it was too expensive. Others believed the government should not be involved in health care. Protesters filled the streets. They held signs and shouted, "No to Obamacare!" The media talked about the controversy every day. Nancy faced strong opposition. Some politicians tried to stop the bill. They said it was impossible. They said it would fail. But Nancy did not give up. She believed in the plan. She knew it could save lives. In Congress, the debate was long and intense. There were arguments, delays, and heated discussions. Some lawmakers refused to listen. Others were afraid of losing their jobs if they supported the bill. Nancy stayed calm. She spoke with confidence and patience. She explained how the law would help families. She reminded everyone why they were there, to serve the people. Behind closed doors, Nancy worked tirelessly. She met with lawmakers from both parties. She listened to their concerns. She made changes to the bill to win their support. She made phone calls late into the night. She walked the halls of Congress, speaking to anyone who would listen. Her leadership was tested. There were moments of doubt. Some days it felt like the bill would never pass, but Nancy refused to quit. "We have to do this," she told her team. "People are counting on us." Then came the final vote. The chamber was full. The nation was watching. Tension filled the air. One by one, lawmakers cast their votes. Some voted yes, others voted no. Nancy sat quietly, waiting. Her hands were steady, but inside, her heart was pounding. Finally, the results were announced. The Affordable Care Act had passed. Cheers erupted. Some lawmakers hugged each other. Others looked disappointed. Nancy stood up with a smile. She had done it. After the vote, she walked outside the Capitol. Reporters rushed to her. Cameras flashed. Someone asked, "How did you do it?" Nancy replied with a calm voice, "We did it for the people." President Obama later signed the bill into law. It was a historic moment. Millions of Americans could now get health care. Children with pre-existing conditions could not be denied coverage. Young adults could stay on their parents' health plans. It was a new day for health care in America. But the fight was not over. Many still opposed the law. Some states challenged it in court. Others tried to block it. Nancy defended the law again and again. She spoke at events, explaining its benefits. She reminded people that change takes time. Over the years, the Affordable Care Act helped millions. More families had health coverage. Fewer people faced crushing medical bills. Nancy felt proud. She knew that standing for health care was the right thing to do. Years later, she looked back at the struggle. It had been tough. It had been exhausting. But it was worth it. Nancy had proven that strong leadership and determination could change lives. Nancy Pelosi stood for health care. She fought for it with all her heart. And because of her efforts, America took an important step forward. Chapter 10. Balancing Life and Leadership. Nancy Pelosi was not just a leader. She was also a mother and grandmother. Her family was always at the center of her life. No matter how busy she was, she never forgot what mattered most. Raising 5 children while building a political career was not easy. There were busy mornings, late nights, and endless responsibilities. Nancy often found herself juggling meetings, school events, and family dinners. She loved her work, but she also loved being a mother. When her children were young, Nancy focused on them. She helped with homework, cooked meals, and supported their dreams. But as they grew older, she felt a strong pull back to politics. The values she had learned from her parents, service, hard work, and dedication, never left her. Her family encouraged her. Paul, her husband, stood by her side. He understood her passion and believed in her dreams. Her children, too, supported her. They knew their mother wanted to make a difference in the world. Still, balancing life and leadership was a challenge. There were times when Nancy felt torn between her duties at home and her responsibilities in Congress. She remembered sitting at the kitchen table, writing speeches while helping her children with school projects. It wasn't always easy, but she made it work. Nancy often said that being a mother made her a better leader. She understood the struggles families faced. She knew how hard it was to balance work and home. This understanding made her fight even harder for policies that helped working parents. In Congress, Nancy spoke about the importance of family She pushed for paid leave, affordable childcare, and better health care. She believed that families should never have to choose between their jobs and their loved ones. Even when she became Speaker of the House, Nancy made time for her family. She called her children every day, no matter where she was. She made sure to spend time with her grandchildren, reading to them, and sharing stories about her own childhood. There were emotional moments, too. Sometimes she had to miss important family events because of work. She missed birthdays and school plays. It was hard, but she reminded herself why she was doing it: to create a better future for her children and all families across America. Despite the challenges, Nancy never let stress take over. She stayed organized and focused. She made lists, set priorities, and always found a way to make time for both work and home. She believed in taking things one step at a time. One day, a young woman asked her, "How do you do it all?" Nancy smiled and said, "You don't do it all at once. You take it day by day, moment by moment." Her story inspired many. Women across the country looked up to her. They saw her as proof that it was possible to lead and care for a family at the same time. Even during the most difficult times in politics, Nancy found comfort in her family. After long days in Congress, she loved coming home, sitting at the dinner table, and hearing about her children's lives. It reminded her of what was truly important. Nancy often told young mothers, "Family is your strength, not your weakness." She believed that love and support from home gave her the power to face the toughest challenges in Washington. As she continued her career, Nancy carried the lessons of motherhood with her. She balanced leadership with love, hard work with patience, and ambition with care. In the end, Nancy Pelosi showed the world that it was possible to have both: a successful career and a strong family. She proved that leadership does not mean giving up what matters most. It means finding a way to bring it all together. Chapter 11. Facing Divisive Times. In recent years, Nancy Pelosi faced some of the toughest political battles of her career. The country was divided. People had different opinions on important issues: healthcare, immigration, and the economy. Tensions were high. As Speaker of the House, Nancy had to lead through difficult times. She had to stay strong, even when the pressure was overwhelming. Some people supported her, but others strongly disagreed with her decisions. In Congress, debates grew more heated. Lawmakers argued loudly. The media followed every move, reporting on conflicts and disagreements. Some days, it felt like no one could agree on anything. But Nancy did not back down. She believed in unity. She believed that even in difficult times, leaders must stay focused on what matters: helping people. One of the biggest challenges came during government shutdowns. These moments brought fear and uncertainty to millions of Americans. Workers did not receive paychecks. Families worried about their future. People looked to Congress for answers. Nancy knew it was her job to find solutions. She worked day and night, meeting with leaders from both parties. She listened to different ideas and tried to bring people together. But it was not easy. The divisions were deep. Some lawmakers refused to compromise. Despite the challenges, Nancy remained calm. She used her experience and wisdom to guide important decisions. "We must put people before politics," she often said. During one critical moment, she stood before the House of Representatives and gave a speech. Her voice was steady but firm. "We are here to serve the American people," she said. "Let's find common ground and move forward." Some clapped, others stayed silent. Outside of Congress, protests filled the streets. People were angry. They wanted change. Some supported Nancy's leadership while others criticized her. She listened to all sides, knowing that leadership means hearing every voice, even the ones that disagree. In 2019, another challenge arrived: an impeachment trial of the president. It was a historic moment. The nation was watching closely. The decision was not easy. Nancy knew that no matter what happened, half of the country would be unhappy. She took her time. She studied the facts. She asked for advice from experts. She did not rush. When the time came to make a decision, she stood with confidence. She believed in doing what was right, even if it was unpopular. Many people admired her strength. They saw a leader who could handle pressure with dignity and grace. Others continued to criticize her, calling her decisions wrong. But Nancy stayed focused on her mission. She worked hard to pass laws that helped families, businesses, and communities. She pushed for better wages, fair health care, and protection for immigrants. Even during difficult times, she remained hopeful. She often spoke about her belief in the American people. She believed that, in the end, the country could come together and find solutions. Through it all, Nancy's family was always there to support her. Her husband, Paul, reminded her to take breaks and stay strong. Her children and grandchildren gave her moments of joy in the middle of the chaos. Nancy also leaned on her faith. She prayed for wisdom and guidance. She believed that leadership required patience, kindness, and strength. Despite the pressure, Nancy never lost her sense of humor. She often said, "If you want to be in politics, you need a thick skin and a sense of humor." She smiled through tough moments and kept going. Years passed, and Nancy's leadership continued to shape the country. She faced challenges with determination and dignity. She showed that leadership is not just about power, it's about service, courage, and hope. Nancy Pelosi proved that even in divisive times, it is possible to lead with strength and grace. Her experience and determination helped guide the nation through difficult moments. And through it all, she never stopped believing in a better future. Chapter 12: Legacy of Leadership. Nancy Pelosi's journey is a story of courage and determination. From her childhood in Baltimore to becoming one of the most powerful women in American politics, she showed what is possible with hard work and a strong heart. She grew up in a home filled with politics. She learned early about service and leadership. Her father was a mayor, and her mother taught her the importance of helping others. These lessons shaped her life. They gave her the strength to follow her dreams. When Nancy entered Congress in 1987, few imagined the impact she would have. She worked hard, step by step, to prove herself. She never let obstacles stop her. She listened, learned, and fought for what she believed in. Over the years, Nancy broke many barriers. She became the first female Speaker of the House in 2007. It was a historic moment. She stood tall, knowing she was opening doors for women across the country. "For our daughters and granddaughters," she said, "we have made history." Nancy's leadership touched many lives. She worked to provide health care for millions of Americans. She stood up for women's rights, workers, and children. She believed that leadership was about service, not power. But leadership is never easy. Nancy faced challenges and criticism. Some questioned her decisions, others doubted her abilities. But she stayed strong. She reminded herself why she was there, to serve the people. Her strength came from her values. Family, faith, and hard work guided her every step. Even when things were tough, she found time for her loved ones. She showed that it is possible to balance life and leadership. Nancy's voice in Congress was steady and clear. She fought for what she believed was right. Whether it was health care reform, equal pay, or helping small businesses, she worked with determination. She also inspired a new generation. Young women and men looked up to her. They saw her as proof that with effort and passion, anything is possible. Nancy always told them, "Believe in yourself, stay focused, never be afraid to lead." One of the most important parts of her legacy is her resilience. She never gave up, even in the face of criticism and doubt. She faced many political storms, but always kept going. Her leadership was not just about winning. It was about standing firm in difficult times. As she grew older, Nancy looked back on her journey with pride. She knew she had made a difference. She had worked for the people and had done her best. Even after stepping down from leadership roles, she continued to inspire. She encouraged new leaders to step forward. She reminded them that leadership is not about being the loudest voice, but the most determined heart. Her legacy lives on in the laws she helped pass, the people she inspired, and the barriers she broke. She showed the world that leadership is about service, compassion, and courage. Nancy Pelosi's story teaches us all an important lesson. Never stop fighting for what you believe in. With hard work, anything is possible. And with a strong heart, you can change the world. Her journey proves that true leadership is about standing up, speaking out, and always believing in a better future. Nancy Pelosi's legacy will continue to inspire generations to come.